It is time to check in with Amanda Lang, our CTV News chief financial correspondent. So, Amanda, there are some big business stories this week. I guess you might as well start with the Bank of Canada keeping interest rates where they were. Really not a surprise. I know we've talked about this for the past couple of weeks. Anything in what you heard from Tiff Macklem surprise you or cause you concern?
I mean, the only thing I did hear from him was in the Q&A portion of the conference, he made a point of saying, they're still looking through the gain in oil prices and what that's doing to the pump and, the inflation we've seen so far. Looking through it means this could pass, but they're watching to see if it becomes embedded. And what he did say was they stand ready to act, and they can act more than once. In other words, it's a signal to the market that if they have to move to fight inflation, don't think it's just a quarter basis point. It could be 2, it could be 3. It's kind of obvious in one way, which is if they're trying to fight inflation, it is usually more than 1. But just a reminder to people with debt that this could be a period of adjustment again. So I took that on board. He's not saying it's going to happen. They're still watching and waiting. And by the way, he also said they'll lower rates if tariffs hit the economy really hard. But it was just a reminder that I feel like it's a shot across the bow to say, look, if inflation's back, we got to act. So be ready for that.
So one of the things with respect to the fiscal update, and I know we talked about it during the week, so today the new parliamentary budget officer criticizing the government for that update for lacking details on spending targets and results. How unusual is that? It seems to me this is pretty much every budget, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit unusual. Also, she's brand new. So she was speaking in committee, and might have been, I actually didn't see whether she said that in her statement or whether that was sort of in response to direct questioning. So it might be being spun a little bit out of the question. So I'll put an asterisk on it. But It's interesting that she's saying, I was looking for more information because it's her job to go and kind of review it and tell us how she thinks they're doing. So that's a bit problematic. I'll take your point that sometimes these documents can be a bit hazy. I mean, my chief complaint about all budgets, even these kind of mini ones, is they do a really bad job of saying, hey, this was already announced. It's not new money. We're just kind of re-announcing it because it makes us look good. And you have to really work hard to figure out how much is new and what was already spent and what isn't, So I wish it was a little bit more obvious when they present them, like for a fifth grader, that we could understand what's new and what's not.
Yeah. Can I ask as well, with respect to this, and I know obviously the opposition's business here is to criticize the budget, but the idea here that, here we are spending deficit, even though it's come down about $11 billion, we should be paying down the deficit. Other people have weighed in suggesting the same thing. I'm just curious what your take on that is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in that category that wishes we were being a little bit more fiscally prudent. Because the deficit was larger than expected, and they spent a lot of it. Right? It's not just the $11 billion that's left. They spent billions that they could have kept as a non-deficit. And remember, a smaller deficit isn't some kind of weird windfall. It's just less borrowing that you're less in the hole. So it's not like it's some big victory.
Right.
I'm a bit old school on this, Aaron. I've said it before. You don't have to balance a budget every single time. We don't need to be kind of dogmatic about it. But the idea that governments should not run up new debt endlessly to fund programs is one I wish that they would at least acknowledge, even if they said, look, we have to do it now because Canadians need the help right now. The grocery GST credit and this excise tax removal on gas, it's going to cost. That's fine, but at least acknowledge you wish you didn't have to do it and that you could balance the books at some point.
Okay, fair enough. Can I bring up something else that we talked about on my show yesterday, the idea of privatizing Canadian airports. Now, it's not a new idea. I know this has been talked about in the past. Is it gaining momentum? Are you hearing more about this? And is there an upside, downside? What are we looking at?
I definitely feel as though it's being floated, right? I mean, it was kind of out there this week. This Canada Strong Fund, the $25 billion fund that the government talk about sketchy on details. Like, we still don't really know much about what that would do or how it would do it. One thing we definitely don't know is where it was going to get the money. And there's been this suggestion that maybe the government kind of monetizes assets that we own. Now, remember, if the government, quote unquote, owns them, it means you and I own it, right? It's a taxpayer-owned asset. And sometimes they're really valuable. They kick off a lot of cash flow. They can be profitable. Airports can be quite profitable. The question is, does it make sense to free up that money and use it for some better purpose? And there you're going to get a philosophical debate, and it usually turns on whether you think the government's going to do a better job with the money than the private sector does. And most people kind of wonder about that. So that's the argument against it is, at least right now, we know where it is. It's in an asset that's safe. Nobody can just spend it willy-nilly. If the government sells this, it's like privatizing the LCBO, right? The concern is, this government will get a big, huge windfall, but where's the money for future generations? If you leave it locked up in the asset, they get their hands on it.
Of course, the other side of that argument might be that, in private hands, it would probably be run more efficiently than in the public hands because,
also true.
History shows us that, I think. All right, I want to bring up one other thing. This could be a big story, hopefully for Montreal, and that is the new multinational defense bank. I'm not sure exactly what we're calling it, but it's coming to Canada. We know that for a fact. Can you just, to let people know what this bank actually is or what it does?
So this is an interesting one, and there's a lot we don't know about it. We know that it will be in Canada. We don't know where in Canada. We don't actually know. We know a lot of NATO members have signed on, but we don't know whether all of them have, and we certainly don't know whether the biggest of them have. So is Germany signed on? I don't think we have confirmation of that yet. What it will do will be another kind of multi-lending organization, I think in the same category as sort of a World Bank kind of thing, where countries pool their assets in order to make big investments in things. It's an interesting concept. It's definitely a very, very current concept. It's very interesting that Canada kind of has won the right to locate it here. And I guess that will bring me back to this question of, is that because no big Europeans are signed on? Because if they were signed on, does it logically belong in Germany or some other European country? So we don't know the answer to that yet, but it's cool that it's here, and I think it'll be probably it's a benefit to Canada. And what it does speak to, if you want to spin it this way, is it sort of following on from the Prime Minister's speech in Davos, and our visibility in the world is better today than it's been in a long time, and that's surely a good thing for businesses.
Yeah, that's a great point, right? The idea that the rest of the world, this is an international bank, right, gets to find out more about Canada, and hopefully if it ends up in Montreal, and I think most people think it will because the food is better here, then it's, of course, it's good for everybody. And it does bring attention to Canada, kind of poking the U.S. in the eye a bit with this, I think, too.
Yeah, I think that's right, and it works well on multiple fronts. And by the way, for Montreal, if you do land the location, it solidifies your direct flights to Europe. So that's even better, right? The routes have to be maintained, so that'll be great.
I didn't know that. Okay, that's excellent news as well.
I mean, I'm just surmising, but if you're going to have a big bank like that in Montreal,
make sense,
you're going to have to let people get there easily, right?
Last thing I want to ask, just because we talked about interest rates to start, the U.S. Fed, for what it's worth, has left their rates as well, pretty much where they were unchanged there. A surprise there to you?
It wasn't a surprise, but it was a very divided Fed. I mean, it was this is a wrestling match because they have the same issues we have. They're slightly different, and they're not in as good a position as we are, by the way. They haven't tackled inflation the way we have, and they didn't manage to get their rates back to a better level the way our central bank did before all of this. So they're definitely on this kind of fence of, do we need to fight inflation or do we need to help the economy? And it's a bigger struggle there, but they landed in the same place, which is there's just too many unknowns to make a call right now.
We leave it at that. Amanda, thank you so much. Always appreciate it.
Great to talk.
The newest tracks. Let's go. New music. And the next big thing.
Always on the new music first.
Your first place to hear it all.
'Cause you gon' like it, love it, wanna play it twice. Playing now.
iHeart New Music. Your digital station for brand new drops, fresh finds, and tomorrow's bangers.
I think we need something new.
Discover iHeart New Music. Always fresh, always first. Stream now on the free iHeartRadio app.